In the Appalachian Mountains, some warnings are not taught like ordinary rules. They are repeated quietly until everyone understands them. You hear them from older relatives, from hunters, from people who know which roads disappear into the mountains and which trails feel completely different after sunset. One warning is especially simple. If you are alone in the woods after dark and hear someone call your name from beyond the trees, do not answer. Not because the voice will sound threatening, because it probably will not. It may sound familiar. It may sound tired. It may sound exactly like someone you trust. And according to the stories, that is what makes answering dangerous. The Appalachian Mountains stretch across a huge section of the eastern United States. The landscape changes from region to region, but certain details remain familiar. Dense forests, deep valleys, old roads, remote cabins, and communities where stories can survive for generations without ever being written down. Some of those stories are warnings. Do not whistle after dark. Do not follow strange lights. Do not approach animals that behave incorrectly. And if the forest suddenly becomes completely silent, pay attention. Not every story connected to these mountains is verified the same way. Some involve documented phenomena. Others survive through folklore, local warnings, modern reports, and patterns repeated by people who spend a great deal of time outdoors. That distinction matters. Tonight, we are not going to pretend every strange story proves something supernatural. We are going to look at 6 warnings and ask why people continue repeating them. 6 warnings about voices, sounds, movement, animals, lights, and silence. And the strange thing is that even when the supernatural explanation begins to fall apart, the warning underneath it sometimes still makes sense. Lock the doors, put on your headphones, and pull the blanket up, because the terror starts now. The first rule begins with your own name. Imagine you are walking back toward a cabin sometime after midnight. Rain passed through the mountains earlier that evening. The ground is wet. Every step presses dead leaves into cold mud. Your flashlight catches thin mist hanging between the trunks, but the beam reaches only a few yards before everything disappears into darkness again. You have been walking long enough that the normal forest sounds have faded into the background. Insects, running water somewhere below the trail, a branch shifting in the cold, your own boots. Then somebody says your name. Quietly, you stop. The voice came from behind you, not extremely far away, maybe 30 yards, maybe less. And the disturbing part is not that you heard a voice, it is that you recognize it. Maybe it sounds like your brother, maybe your partner, maybe your mother. Someone whose voice your brain knows so well that recognition happens before logic has time to react. The voice says your name again, softer this time, almost concerned. Your first instinct is automatic. You want to answer. You want to say, "What?" You want to turn around and shine the flashlight into the trees. That is exactly what the old warning tells you not to do. You keep your eyes on the trail. You do not answer. You do not call back. You keep walking. In some versions of mountain folklore, answering a mysterious voice is treated like acknowledgement. You are not simply responding to a sound. You are letting whatever produced it know that you heard it. Some versions go further. They claim the voice will move closer after you respond. Others say it may imitate someone familiar, because fear works better when it arrives wearing something you trust. Those are stories. There is no verified evidence that an unknown creature in the Appalachian Mountains can copy the voices of people you know. There are also very ordinary reasons a voice in the wilderness can seem impossible. Sound behaves strangely in valleys. A person speaking from far away may sound surprisingly close. Echoes can change direction. Wind can carry fragments of conversation across distances that feel wrong when you cannot see the source. Animals create another problem. Foxes, owls, and other wildlife can produce sounds that seem disturbingly human when heard in darkness. Then there is the human brain. When you are tired, isolated, and already alert, your mind becomes extremely good at finding familiar patterns inside unclear information. A vague sound becomes a word. A word becomes your name. A voice becomes someone you know. That could explain a lot, but this is the part that stays with me. You do not need to believe that something supernatural learned your name for the situation to become dangerous. If you are alone in remote woods and hear an unidentified person calling from darkness, leaving the trail to investigate may be a terrible decision. Maybe the legend exaggerates the reason. Maybe it gives the danger a face because a face is easier to remember. But the instinct underneath the rule is harder to dismiss. Do not walk toward an unidentified voice in the darkness just because it sounds familiar. And if you are the kind of person who would rather spend the night hearing stories most people prefer to ignore, leave a like early in the video. It is the easiest way to tell the algorithm that this kind of story is worth sharing. Now listen carefully, because the second rule starts with something almost everyone does without thinking. Never whistle after dark. Picture a small campsite high above a valley. The fire has burned down to red coals. Most of your equipment is already packed. The temperature has dropped enough that every breath feels sharper than it did an hour ago. There is no nearby traffic, no house lights, no conversation. You are alone. Maybe you whistle while tightening a strap on your backpack. Nothing dramatic, just 3 short notes. The sound leaves your mouth and travels into the trees. For several seconds, nothing happens. Then you hear the same pattern again, far below you. 3 notes. You freeze. At first, there is an easy explanation, an echo. So you wait. Then curiosity takes over. You whistle again. 3 short notes. This time the answer comes from somewhere behind the campsite. Closer. Same rhythm. Wrong tone. You stop moving. Every normal sound around you suddenly feels irrelevant. You listen for only one thing. Then it happens again. But this time, you did not whistle first. 3 notes come from the trees. Closer still. Across different cultures, nighttime whistling has been treated as a bad idea for generations. The explanation changes depending on the tradition. Some stories say whistling attracts spirits. Others say it attracts predators. Others simply treat it as announcing yourself to something better left undisturbed. That does not make anyone's supernatural explanation true. But there is a practical reason the idea survives. Sound can carry extremely well at night. Cooler air and mountain terrain can make direction difficult to judge. A whistle may bounce across ridges and return from an angle you never expected. Birds can imitate surprising sounds. Another person may be much farther away than they seem, or much closer. And that is where rational explanation and instinct stop being enemies. Maybe the answer was an animal. Maybe another camper heard you. Maybe terrain distorted your own whistle. But if you cannot identify the source, continuing to whistle gives away information while telling you almost nothing in return. Stories from hunters and campers often describe a similar reaction when an unfamiliar sound begins repeating nearby. Stop making noise, listen, get your bearings, leave if the situation feels unsafe. I cannot tell you that something supernatural is waiting for someone to whistle. But if I were alone on a mountain after midnight and something in the darkness copied the exact pattern I had just made, I would not whistle a third time, because hearing something somewhere behind you is one kind of fear. Feeling something match your movement is another. The third warning is simple. If you feel something following you, do not let panic control where you look. You are moving through dense timber. The trees are thick enough that your flashlight creates narrow walls of light and shadow. At first, you hear nothing unusual. Then a step lands behind you. You take another. So does it. You slow down. The sound slows down. You stop. Nothing. For several seconds, there is only your breathing. You start walking again. One step, another. And there it is. Movement behind a tree at exactly the same pace. American lumberjack folklore has a creature built around this fear. The Hidebehind. Stories describe something that refuses to stand where you can see it directly. It stays behind trees, behind rocks, behind the person trying to find it. Every time you turn, it moves with you, always outside your vision, always close enough to feel present. The Hidebehind belongs to folklore. There is no verified evidence that such a creature is responsible for unexplained disappearances. But the idea is effective because it exploits a real weakness. Human beings hate feeling watched from behind. In darkness, the nervous system increases its sensitivity to movement and sound. Your own jacket brushing against a backpack can become a footstep. A branch settling behind you can sound like something that stopped when you stopped. A squirrel moving through leaves may seem far larger when you cannot see it. The brain fills gaps quickly because waiting for perfect information was not always useful for survival. That explanation makes sense. What interests me is how specifically the old story uses the one place we cannot monitor without changing direction. Behind us. You turn, nothing. You face forward again. A sound. You turn faster. Still nothing. Eventually, you are no longer navigating the trail. You are hunting for whatever you think is hunting you. That creates a very real danger. Roots, steep slopes, loose rocks, unmarked turns, missing trail markers because your flashlight is pointed backward. Sometimes fear does not need to put something in front of you. It only needs to convince you to stop watching where you are going. So if the feeling becomes overwhelming, keep moving toward a known location. Stay on the marked trail. Do not let an unexplained noise pull you deeper into unfamiliar terrain. The strange thing about the Hidebehind is that it is supposed to avoid being seen. The fourth warning is worse, because this time, the thing making you uncomfortable is standing directly in your headlights. If the deer looks wrong, keep your distance. It is after 11 at night on a narrow mountain road. Your headlights sweep across brush, exposed rock, and pale tree trunks. Then two eyes reflect back. A deer is standing at the edge of the pavement. That is normal. You slow down because you expect it to jump. It does not. You keep rolling forward. Still nothing. The deer remains completely still. Its head is turned toward your car. You stop. For a few seconds, both of you simply wait. Then the animal takes one step, and your body reacts before your mind understands why. Something about the movement feels wrong. Maybe one leg is too stiff. Maybe the neck sits at an uncomfortable angle. Maybe it seems unusually tall because of the slope. Maybe the animal is simply not afraid of your vehicle. But your brain has already decided that the pattern is incorrect. In modern Appalachian horror stories, especially those shared online, animals like this are often called not deer. The concept became especially popular in internet folklore. That distinction is important. This is not something we should present as an ancient, universally documented Appalachian creature. It is better understood as modern folklore built around a very old human reaction. Something familiar behaving in an unfamiliar way. In the stories, the deer is almost right. That is the entire point. Its proportions seem slightly wrong. Its movement feels delayed. Its posture does not match what you expect. And because it is almost normal, your imagination does the rest. Maybe something is pretending to be a deer. Maybe it copied the shape without understanding the body. That is the supernatural version. There are also very real reasons a deer can appear frightening. Injury can change how an animal walks. Disease can affect coordination. Malnutrition can alter body shape. Chronic wasting disease can cause severe weight loss, abnormal behavior, reduced awareness, and neurological problems in infected deer and related animals. That does not mean every strangely behaving deer has chronic wasting disease. It also does not make the not deer stories evidence of anything paranormal, but it shows why those stories work. We know what a deer is supposed to do. It should react, run, flinch, move like a deer. When it does not, familiarity becomes uncomfortable. Maybe the frightening part is not the idea that something is pretending to be an animal. Maybe it is how quickly an ordinary animal can stop feeling ordinary. Either way, if I saw one standing strangely beside an empty mountain road, I would not get out of the car for a closer look. I would give it space. I would keep moving. Think about that for a second. We like to believe we control a situation because we have headlights, a phone, and a locked car door. But darkness has a way of making that confidence feel temporary. If this story made you look toward a dark window for even a second, consider subscribing. We come back to places like this every week, and the next warning is different. You are not supposed to escape what you see. You are supposed to resist following it. Never follow unexplained lights into the woods. Brown Mountain in North Carolina has been associated with reports of unusual lights for more than a century. People have described points of light appearing near the mountain and surrounding areas. Some seem to rise, some drift, some flash briefly and disappear. Others appear to move across the darkness. The Brown Mountain lights are important because the reports themselves are part of the documented public history of the region. People really have reported seeing lights. What those lights actually are is the complicated part. And that is where folklore begins filling the empty space. Imagine standing at a safe overlook late at night. The mountain is almost completely dark. Then a pale orange light appears in the distance. It hangs there for several seconds, then disappears. Another appears lower on the slope. Then one seems much closer. For a moment, you are certain it is between the trees below you. Curiosity starts negotiating, just a little closer, just enough to see where it came from. You leave the overlook, you move downhill. 50 steps into the woods, the light appears again. Still ahead. You walk toward it. It disappears. A minute later, it appears farther away. You keep going. Then you finally look behind you. The overlook is gone. You cannot see the road. Every tree looks identical. That is the moment when the supernatural explanation almost stops mattering. Stories about mysterious lights exist in many regions. Depending on the tradition, they may be described as spirits, warnings, lost travelers, or signs of death. Those interpretations are folklore. They are not confirmed evidence explaining the Brown Mountain lights. Possible explanations proposed over the years have included distant vehicle lights, atmospheric conditions, and other natural or human sources. It is also possible that different sightings have completely different causes. A light reported in one decade does not have to be the same phenomenon reported in another. That possibility makes sense to me, but it does not remove the practical danger. You do not need a supernatural light to become lost. You only need a moving reference point in darkness. Leave a marked road or overlook, and direction can collapse much faster than people expect. Trees erase landmarks. Slopes distort distance. Your flashlight illuminates only what is directly in front of you. A phone does not make you immune to poor decisions. Maybe the light is mysterious. Maybe it is completely ordinary. Either way, the safest place to observe it is usually the place where you already know how to leave. And the final warning begins when there is nothing left to follow. No light, no voice, no whistle, no sound at all. The sixth rule says that when the forest suddenly becomes silent, pay attention. Imagine walking through woods that have been noisy for hours. Crickets are constant. Something small moves through the leaves every few minutes. A frog calls from somewhere below the trail. Wind moves through the canopy. None of those sounds feels important because they have been there all night. Then something changes. You do not immediately understand what happened. You simply stop walking. No insects, no birds, no leaves moving. For the first time all night, your own breathing is the loudest thing you can hear. The silence feels almost physical. You listen harder. A step lands somewhere to your left. You turn your eyes toward the sound. Nothing. Another step. You stop moving. It stops too. Then 3 slow knocks come from somewhere beyond the trees. 1, 2, 3, silence. Several seconds pass. Then the pattern repeats. 1, 2, 3. This is usually the moment where a story becomes supernatural. Something large is approaching. Something knows where you are. Something caused the entire forest to become quiet. But silence itself proves none of those things. Wildlife activity changes constantly. Animals may become quiet when predators move nearby. Weather affects birds and insects. Human activity can interrupt normal sounds. Sometimes what feels like sudden silence is simply the moment your attention finally notices noises that were already fading. Our brains also react strongly to abrupt environmental changes. For most of human history, paying attention when every other animal suddenly changed behavior may have been useful. That instinct did not disappear because we started carrying smartphones. So I would not treat silence as proof that something supernatural is nearby. I would treat it as information. Check your surroundings. Check the trail. Check the weather. Confirm your location. Do not leave a marked route because you heard a noise you cannot identify. And if you believe a large animal or another person may be nearby, creating distance is usually more useful than proving what made the sound. That is where all 6 warnings begin to look different. At first, they sound like monster stories. Do not answer the voice. Do not whistle. Do not let fear pull your attention away from the trail. Do not approach the strange deer. Do not follow the light. Pay attention when the forest becomes silent. Now remove the supernatural explanation. Look only at the behavior underneath. Do not walk toward an unidentified voice in darkness. Do not repeatedly announce your location when you cannot see what is around you. Do not let panic destroy your sense of direction. Do not approach wildlife behaving abnormally. Do not abandon a known route to chase an unexplained light. Notice sudden changes in your environment. Those are not terrible wilderness rules. Maybe that is why stories like these survive. A good legend does not need to be literally true to keep someone alive. It only needs to be memorable enough that you remember the warning when fear begins making decisions for you. Maybe monsters were never the most important part. Maybe the story was simply the packaging. A frightening voice is easier to remember than a lesson about nighttime navigation. A strange deer is more memorable than a warning about sick wildlife. A mysterious light creates a better story than someone simply getting lost after leaving the trail. But once the story enters your head, the behavior stays with it. Do not answer. Do not follow. Do not approach. Pay attention. That does not mean every strange experience has a simple explanation. Some reports remain difficult to reconstruct because there is not enough information. People see lights they cannot identify. They hear sounds they cannot place. Animals behave in unexpected ways. Isolation changes perception. And sometimes a person walks away from the experience completely convinced that something happened, which ordinary explanations do not fully capture. I cannot tell you what every person heard in those forests. I cannot tell you what every distant light was. And I cannot tell you that every strange animal was simply sick. But I can tell you this. If I were alone on an Appalachian trail after midnight and heard my own name coming from deep inside the trees, I would not walk toward the voice just to prove that I was being rational. I would keep moving. I would stay on the trail. And I would remember the rule. So think about this before the video ends. If tomorrow night you were alone in one of these forests and heard the voice of someone you love calling from a place where they could not possibly be, what would you trust? The explanation in your head? Or the instinct telling you to keep walking? Tell me in the comments which of these 6 rules you would never break. Leave a like if you want more stories where folklore, real places, and unexplained reports overlap. And tell me which region we should investigate next. Until next time, stay on the trail and pay attention when the forest stops talking.